Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, and today I'm joined by Anna Kisting. She's a data-savvy leader at Revo Health. Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start with, who is Anna Kisting beyond your impressive resume?
Oh, yes. So I am the Director of Clinical and Business Intelligence at Revo Health. And one of the things that I really love doing is helping people succeed. I love to coach kids. I love to help see things in people that they might not see in themselves and just help them get better and be the kind of person that they want to be.
I love that. Where do you think that comes from, Anna?
About 2 or 3 years ago, I was at my previous job before this one, and I said something to the effect that, like, I just think I can do anything. And I don't think that I can be like a professional basketball player, but I think that if I worked really hard and I had somebody helping me, I could be probably like the best basketball player in my hometown over the course of a really long time. And somebody said, that's not normal. And I was like, I don't understand. And they said, not everybody thinks that they can do everything. People get afraid. They think that other people are smarter than them. And it just blew my mind that not everybody believed that if they worked hard or they tried or whatever, that they could be better. And so I had thought a lot about that. And I was like, well, what if I helped people? What if I helped them see that they can do more? And it just kind of blossomed from there. And the other part of that I've really come, and I would see this with kids a lot. You could encourage them and they would work harder because they would just trust you as an adult. So when I was coaching my running groups, I'd be like, well, you can run faster. Like, you could see that they're not even breathing hard and all of these things. And I'm like, you can run faster. And they would just trust you and they would run faster and they would just be so proud of themselves. And so I would start translating that into working with adults too. It's harder with them because they don't just blindly trust in general, which is probably healthy. But I did translate that from my youth coaching into helping adults be better as well.
Wow. So many directions I want to go with that. It's interesting to me to hear you talk about this growth mindset and your awareness that it's unique and something that, for so long you thought everybody just assumed that they had, or you just assumed everyone had that same mindset.
Yeah.
What do you think it was about either your personality type or your formative years in your childhood that helped kind of solidify that mindset for you?
I don't know if it was one specific event. I think it's when you're not as concerned with what other people think, and so you just give things a shot, I think. When you start caring if you're successful, or if you start caring if you're going to get made fun of, it starts getting a lot harder to take those risks. And so I don't necessarily care if I succeed. I care if I do my best. I care if I try really hard. And I think a lot of people just look at a thing and they're like, well, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't be good enough or something. And I'm like, I don't. So I'm a runner, and people will say, well, I couldn't be a runner. Like, those people are so fast. And I was like, well, have you ever been to a race? Like, people literally take over an hour to do a 5K. Like, they're strolling. You could stroll a 5K like right now. You would be fine. But I think it's just a fear of not being the best. And I think also people, I don't know, I see a lot of excuses also. So I don't think I have a specific thing that triggered me to do that. I think just not worrying as much about what people think of me.
And it sounds like sort of a sequence of events where you try something and you see, well, that worked or it didn't work, and just realizing that you can live through those over time.
Yeah. I jokingly say that my inner self is like the toddler who's like, I do it myself. So I routinely see or experience a thing. Like, we had cheese, and this was when we lived in the South, and the cheese was not nearly as good as it up here. And I was like, I can make cheese. And so, like, it was this huge process. I do not recommend that people make cheese because I was, like, sitting by my stove for hours, keeping it, like, 110 degrees, stirring it. But I was like, why not? People used to make cheese, like, or ice cream or whatever. Like, why not just try it?
I love that mentality. I do it myself. How did the cheese experiment turn out, Anna?
The cheese was delicious. It just took so long.
Okay.
And it's so time consuming. I mean, like, I literally, you have to keep the pot between, like, 106 and, like, 115 for, like, 2 hours.
Okay. That's a commitment.
It's commitment, and it wasn't that much better or cheaper than what you could get at the grocery store.
Okay.
It's like,
But you tried it.
I did it, and I would do it again. It just wasn't that fun.
Yeah. That's neat.
Yeah.
I heard you talk about this opportunity to see potential in others and maybe expand their awareness around what's possible for themselves. And you use the example of coaching kids that they can run faster. You can see that potential in them. Have there been formative experiences in your life that where you've been the recipient of somebody identifying your potential?
Yes. There's been a few times. I think the one that really put my career and trajectory. So when I was in college, I majored in art, which I'm not a good artist. People do make a living off of that. I had no hope. I don't know what I was thinking. But during college, I was part of an organization that raised a lot of money for the Children's Hospital. And so when I graduated, the CFO called and asked me if I wanted a job in accounting. And I was like, yes. I just majored in art. I don't know what this job is. And I took the job and learned within a week. I had so underqualified, so had no idea what I was doing. Probably, I mean, he clearly saw something in me. And it was such a wonderful experience. He put me with this woman named Chris, and she just brought me to everything, all of these meetings. And I would go and I would take notes on what would happen in that meeting to share with people was the very small contribution I could make. But then also I would take notes on what people were doing in those meetings. And so these were a lot of finance meetings, and they were writing queries in SQL or using pivot tables or doing things. And so then on the weekends, because my husband was finishing his dissertation, I would learn how to do all of the things that I would watch people do because I didn't have anything. I mean, we're in the coffee shop for 20 hours. And so I learned really, really quickly why they were making the decisions they were doing, how to make these formulas, how to join data together. And it ended up kind of becoming my career. But definitely, if that guy had not seen something in me, I don't know where I would be today.
What do you think he saw in you all those years ago?
I think he saw somebody who worked really hard and learned and just didn't had the confidence to figure things out is what I'm guessing. Because when you graduate from college, you really don't know that much. And it's not, I mean, you learn things in college, yes, but there's just so much that you don't know. And somebody who's willing to learn and try and just, I think, is the most important skill that you can learn and identify when you're hiring a college grad.
Yeah, you lack real world experience.
Yeah. And even when you hire somebody who got a degree in data, those data sets are clean, which never exist. And so they're like, this is all fancy, this is all perfect. And you're like, oh, I know how to run these things. And then you give them a real data set and they're like, well, what's this outlier? And I was like, you figure it out. I don't know. That's the job.
Yeah.
And so, you do definitely lack that real world experience from college.
So how did you move into the world of data? Art major.
Yeah.
Where you are now. Give us the overview.
So I got that first job and I was learning kind of data structures and creating my own databases in Microsoft Access, which is everybody's first baby database. It's a very safe place to make mistakes. And so I did that for a long time. And then I learned about a software called Tableau, which is data visualizations.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, now I get to do this data. And I really did enjoy organizing that information. But now I get to make it pretty. I get to pick colors. I get to make charts. I get to organize that way in a visual way that people get to see it.
I can see your art side coming out.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so I learned that, and then I was kind of doing some side Tableau projects. I kind of created this own sort of independent company thing and just doing a handful of them, really more because I really loved it and I wanted to do more, not as like a career trajectory. And so, and then my main job laid off our entire department. And so I was applying for jobs and I had that job I was working from home. And so I called my clients that at like the two that I had, and I was like, I'm gonna finish this project and then I'm done because I'm gonna go to an office job and I'm not gonna be able to take calls during the day. And so we'll finish this up and then I'm gonna, move on to the next part of my life. And one of them called me back and said, well, you don't have a job, so why don't you just come and work for us?
Mm.
And I was like, well, that sounds great because you're right, I don't have a job now. And so that was really a cool opportunity. Um, that so the that was with the Iowa Hospital Association. And so every state has a mandate to collect everything that happened in a hospital.
Okay.
So every charge, who you are, how much did you weigh, what were all the codes, how much did each of those codes did they bill for, who was your doctor, like literally everything. And so the Iowa Hospital Association collects that, I think, at the time for like 15 different states, and they keep it all in their databases. And then I created a visual, like using Tableau, a visual reporting software that was accessible to every hospital in 9 states. And so that was a really cool opportunity to create from the ground up this software, this solution that was used by, like 1,000 people across the US. It was really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of data to sift through too.
Yes. It was a lot of data to sift through. And so, but I was doing all of that all by myself.
Wow.
And I was just getting really burned out, and then COVID happened, and so I was calling hospitals and getting their hospitalization information and finding out if they needed more PPE and sending a National Guard to them. Like, it was just a lot. And I just got burned out and I wanted to do something else. And so this guy that I follow on LinkedIn, I noticed had been he ran a consulting firm, and I noticed that he had been hiring a bunch of people that I follow on LinkedIn that I really had a lot of respect for. And he posts a lot about his leadership style and his belief in creating more leaders. And so I saw that he was hiring and I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I'll work there. So I applied and I started working there as a consultant. And that was a really wonderful experience. So he had been a consultant at one of the big firms and looked around as you do as a consultant, because you just go, it's such an amazing experience. Everyone should be a consultant for sort of short period of time. You learn so much so fast. And he was looking around at all these big companies and said, I don't see a lot of good leaders here. I don't see people who care about their people. I see people who just care about money. They have no problem laying people off. They don't have clarity. They're not nice and all of these things. And so he started his company as sort of a leadership academy. So we were expected to bill a certain number of hours per week because you have to be able to pay people. But then the rest of the time we had leadership development, and we would read books and we would do different classes and we would talk about our own leadership style. And it was just such a really cool experience to be able to have those conversations with your coworkers, be able to disagree with them, hear how other people, what their styles were. And, it just really, the combination of going into businesses, seeing problems, fixing their problems, seeing how they were set up, and then having those conversations on the side was just such a great learning experience.
I want to go back to, you find this person on LinkedIn, you're following them.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned he was posting a lot about his leadership style, what he believed about leaders. Do you remember what specifically really spoke to you?
Not specifically, but he seemed so human. About so much on LinkedIn is just kind of like icky, fake stuff. And there's, that whole genre of LinkedIn where they even make fun of people's LinkedIn posts. But it was really talking about like his kids, and he coaches his kids' baseball team, which is he has like a million stories about that he always ties back to leadership. But it just seems so authentic and in his voice to let's try to be good and better people together. And I don't have all the answers, but I want to figure it out. I want smart people to figure it out with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really heard about the human side behind the
Yeah.
field of work versus let's maximize profits and try to take advantage of people and get maximum productivity and pay the lowest amount we can pay. It's a radically different approach if you come from a very different set of environment or cultural norms.
Yeah. So I don't want to say I'm not interested in profit, but I definitely am significantly less interested in productivity and profit than I think a lot of people are. I think that when you up productivity, especially in like the data world or things like that, you're not answering even the right questions. And so I would rather answer less questions and answer the right questions and have something really powerful than just kicking out another dashboard, another form to fill out, another thing. I really want to stop and pause and like, you know, why are you doing this? Is a really quick, easy form going to be good enough because you're just testing it out? Is this need to be perfect? There's so many questions to answer. And so I'm a lot less concerned about like the output quantity as I am about the quality.
Give us some more examples of the right questions.
In the data world, when we're developing reports, it's just asking like, what are you going to do with this, and keep pushing until they really understand what actions they're going to take, why they want this information. And often I get asked questions like I get a request for something that isn't going to answer the question that they really want to answer. And so keep pushing them. And, I forget there's a number, like you have to ask why 3 times or something like that to get to the actual thing that somebody needs to be able to answer.
Yeah. And that why is so powerful.
Yeah.
To your point, not only in what type of data are we capturing and how are we capturing it and what's next as a result of it, but also from an alignment standpoint so that you're not at conflict with others because there's a lack of awareness or a lack of alignment around why are we doing this.
Yes. And also people want more and more and more data information so that they don't have to make a decision.
That's interesting.
I have found that like just make the damn decision. Like this isn't, you've got all of your things, and I 100% can go back and spend 10 more hours finding this one random number, but like you have what you need. Just go for it.
That is fascinating. I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
heard that before, thought about that.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time.
Why do you think what's the hesitation with making the decision?
I have seen it because they don't feel safe. I think a lot of companies, you don't have room to make mistakes. And so they're afraid that if they do make that mistake, then they're going to get fired, or it's going to be, their boss is going to yell at, like, whatever the situation is. I don't think we should be able to tolerate mistakes. I mean, obviously, if somebody's not a good fit and they're constantly, that's a different situation. But I do think we should allow people to make some mistakes without fears.
It's really the only way, my belief is it's the only way to grow, because
Yeah.
if you're not making mistakes, you're really not pushing past, you talked earlier about this coaching that you do with
Yeah.
kids and seeing that they're not breathing, as heavily as they could be. And I love this concept of finding your edges, but the only way to really find your edges is if you get right up against them and maybe even go beyond them.
Yeah.
And there's a difference, obviously, between life-changing mistakes. I don't want the surgeons out there.
Right.
Oops, made the mistake on
Yeah.
that one. But also, there are so many ways that we can make a sandbox of trying different things out and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't.
And I actually tell my team that if they don't make mistakes from time to time, they're definitely not trying hard enough. And, I was having this conversation because I brought some of the strategies from my last job to this one. So we're all reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People together. And we had a discussion yesterday. And we talked a lot about sort of like your A team and B team members. And so in certain aspects, somebody might be on the A team, like they're the best data visualization, the best, programmer or whatever. But on another thing, they might be on the B team because they've not done that skill. And so finding projects that are less important, less high stakes that you can give your B team people that they can practice so that they can get to the A team. I think identifying the people and the projects that you can match together are really important because otherwise you just end up giving everything to that one person. And I even find myself doing that. I had a project and I was like, I don't have anybody to do it. These two people are busy. And then I looked and I was like, this isn't a big deal. Like if this doesn't get done, it takes longer or it's not right. Like this is so low stakes. Let's give it to this guy who wants to like learn and see what happens. And we'll help him. And if it doesn't go well, we'll give it to somebody else. It's fine.
Yeah, that's so good. And it is true that when you get in your comfort zone of, well, I know I can give it to this person because they're going to reliably get it done, it robs other people of the opportunity to actually develop the skills to become that type of a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned the 7 habits. I was curious what other, you're in that environment of growth, development, reading books, I heard you say. What were kind of the most significant, impactful resources that you came across?
So 7 Habits is my favorite business book. There's a few others. There's a book called Switch about change management. And I complained the entire time we read it. It's like 300 pages, but I have bought that book for so many people because it is a really great change management book. I still stand that it's too long, like a lot of these books, but it's really great. But the other thing that I have really found is that I get a lot out of novels and the human perspective of things. And my perspective and how I perceive and I view people based on books that I've read that are just not traditional ones. So one of my favorite novels is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I joined a book club and that was our first one and I was like, I maybe made a mistake. But I was like, I'm in. Let's what's the worst that could happen? It's such a great book and the villain in that story, like you just felt so sorry for her. And it was such a beautiful, and by the end, you're like, I just stop making mistakes. My heart goes out for you. Like these people want to care about you and you're just awful. And like, you're doing it to yourself. And I think it's made me much more of an empathetic leader as I'm watching these things because people generally aren't evil. They're generally not like horrible human beings, but they get in their own way or, and so being more empathetic, I think, is very key.
That is really powerful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you brought up fiction books and the ability to sort of expand awareness or grow empathy or understand complexities or the nuance that happens in life. I've had similar experiences. And I hadn't even thought about it. You shook that loose in me of some of the formative novels that I've read along the way that really changed my thinking in really dramatic ways.
What were your novels?
Oh, man. One of them, and this one's kind of a silly one, but it's this book called Delirium by Lauren Oliver.
I've heard of it. I have not read it, though.
Decades ago. I mean, it's a young adult, kind of post-apocalyptic one. And I was in sort of a challenging season of life. And the book talks about how there's this surgery that you can undergo that kind of takes away kind of the pain or the downside or the heartbreak or the negative emotions of life. And how tempting that is.
Yeah.
How they actually had kind of forced this upon all of society. And they said this is a great thing and this is a huge advancement. And it really turned people into essentially zombies. I mean, not real zombies, but you can't have the high highs without the low lows or the challenges or the heartbreak or the distress. And it it really spoke to me at a time when I really needed to like understand the advantages. So it's sort of a silly example, but it
No.
was one of those ways that it just alters your perspective in really powerful ways.
There's so much growth that you can have from suffering and from the sadness. I think that's a great example. I think it was Milton that said, like, suffering is a gift and no one has enough of it,
Mm,
which is really hard pill to swallow when you're, like, having a lot of bad days in a row. But it's true, you learn so much from those experiences, those rough times.
yeah, absolutely. So I want to pivot a little bit,
Sure.
and it's sort of in the same vein. Rough times, challenging leaders, many of us have had them. Um, have there been times in your life when you've had a tough leader or colleague where you've really struggled to kind of get on the same page or really struggled? And how has that shaped you?
Yes-ish. So I am fortunate that in my professional career, like, kind of, I say after I graduated, I didn't ever have anyone that was just truly horrible, who was like, "I will just fire anybody because I wanna maximize profit to no ex," all, like, those types of things, or just mean leaders. But I definitely had some leaders who were, um, less than ideal. And I think it teaches you kind of how not to be. Um, and so I think one leader in particular, I would get a lot of comments about how I was just not, like, I didn't have, like, he didn't see the same potential in me that I saw in myself. And so it was really hard on me because I really respected him. And when I started hearing that, I was like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this isn't me. And then it took me a while to be able to say, like, no, I'm not the problem here. Like, if I want to do it, I can do it. And so that has influenced me, that when I see people who are struggling or maybe not doing well, I don't change it from, like, I don't think that they're capable, to, like, maybe this isn't a good fit from them, and maybe I should help them find that fit. At my last job, when I'd have more sort of peer conversations, I would encourage people to quit, because the job consulting is not for everybody. And I think it's a great thing to go into even for a short while, but it was really rough on a few people, and I was like, you're a wonderful human being, and I still stay in touch with those people. I would hire them for different jobs, but um realizing that the potential is there, but maybe the situation isn't a good fit for them.
And it really is magic when it's a win-win for the organization and
Oh,
the
absolutely.
individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can feel it when it isn't.
You can definitely feel it when it's not.
Your comment about that challenging leader who didn't necessarily see the potential in you and how hard that was, it really speaks to how powerful sort of feedback or others' sort of experience of us is and how we may see
Yeah.
ourselves. And I'm struck by how you knew that you still had the potential within you, even if others couldn't see it.
It took me a while to get there. Like, when somebody you respect or is an authority over you says that, it takes you a minute to process. I mean, in me, I would love to meet somebody who doesn't take that, doesn't need that processing time. It took me a while to get to the point where I was like, no, I can do this. I don't know why you don't think I can, but I can.
So, how did you cope with that in that season? How did you navigate that?
I focused on the things that I knew I could do well and that I didn't need validation for.
Mm.
And I focused, so I would, direct my energy into those things and the people that I knew I could help. It Validation and feedback and positive feedback, I just really do think is really important. The negative feedback is, you have to share the things that people can work on too, but I think it is really important for so many people to believe that they can. And I don't know if it's now that I'm leading more people, if I'm more mature, but it does feel like people need more confidence building
Mm.
than I saw a while back.
Hmm.
Interesting.
I don't know if you see any of that, but it does definitely feel like I have to cheerlead more.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I wonder, what are your theories about why that could be?
I think it's social media. I think when, I was growing up, this was we had dial-up internet towards like my high school years, but you couldn't see what everybody else was doing all of the time. And so you didn't compare yourself. I think people just naturally compare themselves and you just couldn't see as many people to compare yourself to. And then I also think that it's a lot harder to fake it in real life. And so you go on Instagram and you see people your age having these cool outfits or doing these cool things. And it's either fake or like you see the one vacation their family took and they had to save for like 10 years and it looks like they go to Hawaii and they had a great time. And you're like, well, how come I can never go to Hawaii? And I'm like, well, we choose to spend our money on vacations this other way, or we can't. And so I think it's a lot easier to compare yourself and you just feel worse.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't think everybody does, but I definitely see it like with my kids and some of my younger employees.
So how do you encourage them and help reflect their potential back in them?
I like to call them into the moment and show them the things that they are doing really, really well.
Mm.
Um, So I just hired some new people, and one of the women who's just doing an incredible job. She had her previous job for a really long time. I know she was just like, did I leave the last job? I knew all of the things. Was this the right fit? And I'm watching her. I'm like, you're doing incredible. I had such lower expectations. I thought it was going to take you a lot longer to get up to speed, and you are doing so much better than I expected. Like, you need to see what I see. And I think sharing that, like I say those words to them,
Mm.
that you just need to like see my perspective and you're just doing incredible. And I think that when I also share the things that people can work on, they know that I'm not just making those things up, because they're like, well, Anna does share with me when I screw up, or does bring the negative comments, or. And so I think that helps also them understand the honesty that I bring to the situation.
Yeah. How about constructive feedback? How have you found delivering that to be most effective?
Very direct with specific examples for them to get better at, and separating it from the person. And so rather than making it like a personality trait or something, like, you know, um, during that meeting, people didn't understand what their takeaways were. So here are some strategies. Like, you can take notes and share your notes during the meeting and type them. You can send a follow-up meeting. Here are 5 ways that you can do that. Like, which one of these ways speaks to you? Or when a project goes wrong, having like a no fault mortem where people can go through and learn from them. I think that that's really helpful. And helping people see, I think a lot of people sense that things aren't going well, but they just either don't want to admit it or need more um, insight to why it's not going well.
Yeah, that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your consulting experience,
Yeah.
what were 1 or 2 of the biggest takeaways that you had from your time in that space?
Relationships matter more than skills.
Hmm.
Absolutely. People will tolerate, like, you have to have skills too. Like, I'm not saying that you don't have to have skills. You have to be able to bring it. But people will definitely tolerate like a 90% solution, or a solution that you has a few extra steps that they have to do that's not perfectly automated, if they like you and they understand why you did it that way and what it will take to get to the next 10% done. So clear communication and having them like you, I think, is the huge things. When people like you and they find that you're valuable, they find projects for you. And I find that even in the business world, like, they want to work with you. They come to you. They see um, you being helpful, and that's how you get promoted. That's how you get raises. Is that you just are in the right room and you get invited in the right room when people want to spend time with you.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of the quality of the relationship and how
Yeah.
critical that is. It reminds me, the higher the quality of relationship, the more tolerance there are for the honest mistakes that will
Yeah.
happen. I'm thinking of somebody I was in communication with at the end of last year. We're now in early 2026. And I had checked in with them, hadn't heard anything, had been thinking about them over the holidays, thinking about them as we started the new year, went back to see where we kind of left things off and realized I had entirely missed an email from her.
Yeah.
And there were questions in it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this happened. Picked up the phone, gave her a call. And fortunately, she understood. And, we didn't have a super strong relationship, but just being able to come to her human to say, this was an honest mistake. I'm embarrassed about it and also apologetic because I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you or ghosting you. And we had a laugh about it and talked it through. But that quality of relationship is so critical because inevitably we will make mistakes. And
Yeah.
certainly the goal is to make as few of them as possible. But we're all human and things will happen.
Yes. I think that creating a space as a leader where people feel like they can share those mistakes and they can make those mistakes is really important. And to being able to be competent at the work is really important. So I'm not discounting that. Like that is huge. But I tell my people that if something happens, like I need to know because people will bring that up to me or I get forwarded an email. And if you share that with me, I can have that context. I can understand that you got into a bad car accident that morning. So of course you were really cranky and you might have been kind of mean in that meeting, but that's not your normal thing. And I can help mitigate those things. But when you don't share and you're not honest about the situation, I think it just makes it a lot worse. My boss, who's really great, I'm really grateful for that, talks about that a lot. He's like, you can make mistakes, but like, I don't want to get blindsided. I don't want to find out about these things from other people because that just stinks. And then I'm not prepared to talk about them.
Yeah, it reminds me of disappointment happens when there's mismatched expectations.
Yeah, I love that. Is disappointment, I always say, is the gap between expectation and reality.
Huh. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's good.
You can steal that.
I will. And I love the emphasis on, yes, skills are important, necessary, but maybe not sufficient. And in a
Oh.
world driven by humans, the relational qualities, the quality of relationship is so critical.
Yes. I think you can, and so in my world, very technical, you can be an individual contributor and you can kind of be like the cliche, like at home in your basement in a hoodie that kind of smells bad, that just gets the work done, but nobody ever really wants to talk to you. And you can do that and you can probably like make a living off of that. But if you ever want to do more than that, like you've got to learn the soft skills. You have to communicate well with others. And even then you're going to be limited. You might not ever be a lead or a senior because somebody else has to step in and translate and communicate and hold all those meetings for you.
Yeah. What kind of consulting did you guys do? Just out of curiosity.
So we did data and analytics, but we also did like process improvements a lot of times. So I did some really cool projects looking at like a brand standards, managing what's the best way to describe it? So when you go to a hotel, they have pillows and they have to have a certain number and they have to have a certain thread count or hardness or softness and things like that. And so those standards change every year. Because if you think about like 30 years ago, the size of the TV was different than it is now. And so I created a process for a hotel chain that managed the way that those brand standards came in, how they were allocated to the brands, because a big chain will have like, 20 brands underneath of it, and how the approvals happened. And so it was, I would say, 30% data. I don't know. The rest of this 80%, 70% people and processes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was so fun to like go through that whole huge process and fix and help that. Because I mean, prior to that, approvals were literally happening in email. And they would take a screenshot of that email and paste it into an Excel. And they had like 170 Excels. And so they were like, well, which brand standard changes have been approved? And the answer is like,
No idea.
I'll be back in like 4 days. I'll go through all these Excels. So anyway, so we streamlined that.
Wow.
So I got to do a lot of really cool projects like that. One of the other things I really learned and found fascinating was just how important clarity is.
Mm.
And clear, like, this is what I'm doing. These are my roadblocks. This is where we're going to be. Because if you're not clear with this project, especially when they're writing pretty big checks, they get pretty ticked off if in your head, you're like, there's no way we can do that part of that project because their technology doesn't exist. But if you don't share that with them, they expect it. And then, who wouldn't, right? And so having those difficult conversations and having clarity on where you're at, if you're going to go over budget or under budget, and if there's additional things you can take on, was also, I learned how important that is.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's totally huge.
Yeah.
And so when I started this current role, I looked around and I realized that there was really no clarity on who was doing what projects, when they started, when they're supposed to be done, what the pipeline is. And so we completely overhauled that. And we have an intake process and we have Gantt charts and we have all of these things. And keep in mind, like, I'm the girl who walks into the room and is like, let's party, let's go. And they're like, well, do we want a chart? And I'm like, no, we don't need a plan. Let's just go. And so for me to come full circle to like really have that, all those project plans, it's a big shift for me.
Especially because I just noticed some excitement as you're like starting to talk about it. And now you're like, I would prepare to hear.
Yeah. No. And I walked into this and I was like, how do you, well, because I could just see how stressed they were when I started because they didn't know what they were supposed to be working on. And they knew things were behind, but they didn't really know how to get the projects going. And so I was like, okay, let's make this plan. Let's, set up these, we have our master project sheets and our subtasks and this whole elaborate system. And it helps us build out all the projects and set deadlines and expectations. And it really has helped a lot. Yeah.
What would those of us not experienced in the world of data and analytics be surprised to know?
About data? Okay. It's a giant mess. It's not nearly as clean as you think it is.
And why is that?
Because nobody wants to take the time. It's boring to clean it.
And what about AI?
Oh, you can't do AI until your data's clean.
So you have to clean it first.
Yeah.
And then you can leverage AI.
Yeah. So you have to have your data organized and properly labeled. So like if you want to put AI on top of your data and have somebody be able to say like, how many books did I sell last week? What's my best selling genre? All of that. All of that data has to be clean and organized and indexed.
And that's a human activity.
You can automate some of it, but it is generally a human activity. And so you can't do all of the sexy data science stuff and now AI, whatever you want to call it, even reporting, basic reporting, until your data is organized. Everywhere I've seen, I was just surprised. So part of when I joined this company, I was like, I want to go into these big Fortune 500s and I want to see what they do. I am going to learn so much. Everything must be perfect. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to make these cool data science projects and we're going to do predictive and all of these things. And I'm like, you're so far away from being able to do this accurately. And I know that they are doing this really well in pockets of things, but so much data is a lot more disorganized than you would expect.
How are the best companies using data to their advantage? What about from your standpoint, like how can companies best leverage the data that they have?
Companies have more data than you would expect. So much information that it's overload and it's really hard to know what to do with it and what to look at it. Like there's jokes where you're like have 87 KPIs. And so there's all these rules on, and once you start measuring a KPI, people figure out how to like game the system and then it becomes obsolete. Like there's all kinds of like human side of these things. And so the best companies, I think, are very targeted and specific on what is important. And so they might only focus on like a tiny fragment of their data, Like, I mean, maybe all of Coke probably looks at all of their sales data, but they probably aren't looking at every possible thing that they possibly can look at because they know that this is the important that's actually going to move the needle on sales to understand where things are selling and not. And they probably have leading indicators of when a product is doing well or not and things like that. But the best companies I know don't try to answer all of the questions. They try to answer like a few of the right questions.
It's good.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, you shared so much with us today. If you were to leave listeners with sort of one piece of encouragement as they kind of think about expanding their own potential and where they're going next, what would you leave listeners with?
I really do think that people are capable of way more than they think that they can. And there's a saying that I've helped a couple of people with, and I've said to people like this girl who works for me, I asked her to help with a project, and she's like, "Well, I don't know. I've never done something like that before." And I'm thinking like, I think you could do this in your sleep. Like, I'm not saying that to her because that's not what she needs to hear. I'm like, I think you should just think about it. You come back and tell me. And she comes back and she's like, Anna, like this is just, I don't know. This would be so new for me. And I said, I want you to think about it differently. I want you to think, why not me? And she's like, okay. And I said, I'm here with you. If you make mistakes, we'll figure it out together. But why not you? And this was, I think, in November, December. And she came to work the next day, and I saw on her computer she had a sticky note that says, why not me? And it just made me so happy. And she has started this project in January, and she is so confident. She is leading meetings like she never has in the past. She is just, I am, every time I see her, the song My Life Would Suck Without You like plays in my head because she's just doing so well. And so the message that I would share with people is that why not you? Like you can do these things. Just try them. And there's people around you that didn't think that they could that are trying them and they're succeeding. So you can too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning in. Join us next week on Leadership Matters.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.